as Maccabees. Once again, welcome to the Forefront Radio. We're going to talk about the book known as the Book of Maccabees. Maccabees. Once again, welcome to the Forefront Radio. We're going to talk about the book known as the Book of Maccabees. Hopefully my internet works clear without any issues. We'll wait for a couple of guests to join on the live stream and we'll get into the discussion on the book known as Maccabees. Shalom to you all. I'm the host of the Forefront Radio. We teach that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, that you are the lost tribes of Israel according to the Bible. We teach history. We teach Bible from a Afro-Hebraic perspective. We hope you can join us on our exciting journey into Holy Writ and understanding that our history is important. Oftentimes we hear the phrase, if you don't know where you come from, you're not going to know where you're going. And many black people don't know that their ancient ancestry starts from the Bible. Meaning, when you read about the Jews, when you read about the different tribes of Israel, these are black and brown people, okay? These are not European people that the Bible is talking about, known as the lost tribes of Israel. The people that are in the Holy Land today are religious converts and secular atheists. So welcome to the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Afia Levi. If you desire to contribute to our efforts to teach the truth, feel free to hit us up on Cash App. Even if it's $1, it goes a long way. Even if it's $20, it goes a long way in helping us teach the truth. Whether it's 50, whether it's 100, whatever you want to contribute to us pushing in the truth, feel free to do so. All right, we're going to start off our discussion at 1 Maccabees Chapter 1. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 1. But before we do, can I get somebody to put a 1 in the chat to make sure that the audio is clear? Can I get y'all to put a 1 in the chat so I know that the audio is clear? If the audio is glitching or if you're getting any audio difficulties, please put a 2 in the chat. All right, thank you, Wiz, for placing a 1. Also, if you're new to the Forefront Radio, feel free to share the room with at least 10 people if you enjoy the content. All right, we're going to start off with the Greek captivity in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece." So now, many people don't know that Alexander the Greek, who they call Alexander the Great, is actually mentioned in the Bible. Many people don't realize it. Many people don't read and study for themselves. So they don't know that Alexander the Greek, our ancestors, fought against his cohorts. Yes, so prior to you coming to the Americas, prior to you leaving Africa, you lived in Northeast Africa, aka Jerusalem, and you fought against the descendants and the people of Alexander the Greek. So when they say Alexander the Greek was great, that's a lie. Because when the Bible talks about his history and his ancestry and what they did to our people in the Holy Land, shalom to you, Most High in Christ bless, it was not a good thing. It was a very bad thing. So now, who are the Macedonians and where do they come from according to the Bible? Let's go to the book of 2nd Esther, chapter 16, and let's read verse 10 to 14. Let's go to 2nd Esther, which is in the Apocrypha, and we're going to read about a man named Haman, and we're going to find out who did Haman come from? What was his ancestry? Because notice it calls Alexander the Greek a Macedonian. So we're right here at 2nd Esther, chapter 16, and we're going to start at verse 10. It says, "For Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amadatha, being indeed a stranger away from the Persian blood, and far distant from our goodness and as a stranger received of us. So Haman was known as a Macedonian. From there, let's go to 2nd Esther chapter 12 and verse 6. It says, Haman, the son of Ammedatha, the Agagite. So first we read that he's called a Macedonian, and then we read that he's called an Agagite. An Agagite. Now, who are the Agagites? In order to find out, we have to go to 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 8. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 8, and we will find out who are the Macedonians, who are called Agagites. Let's find out. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 8. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 8. And it reads, And he took Agag, king of the Amalekites, So write it in the chat. Who was the people of the Agagites? They were also known as who? They were known as the Amalekites. So the Macedonians were known as the Amalekites. So now, who are the Amalekites? Let's go to Genesis. Let's go to Genesis chapter 36. Genesis chapter 36, and let's start at verse 12. It says, Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare Eliphaz Amalek. These were the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. So we see here that the Macedonians were called Agagites, the Agagites were called Amalekites, and Amalek is the son of Esau. So that would mean that the Greeks, the Macedonians particularly, are the sons of the Edomites, the children of Esau. Now, how did God feel about the children of Esau according to the Bible? Let's go to Malachi chapter 1. Malachi chapter 1, verse 1. How did God feel about the Macedonians, aka the Greeks, aka the Amalekites, aka the Edomites, the sons of Esau? Malachi chapter 1, verse 1, it says, The burden of the word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. I have loved you, saith the Lord. Yet ye say, Wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother? Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. So now, according to what we just read in the Bible, we just read that the Greeks were called Macedonians, that they were called the Amalekites, that they were called the children of Esau. How does God feel? Does he love and appreciate Esau, the Greeks, or does he can't stand them? Let's find out. Let's go to the reason why God dislikes Esau. Let's continue. Whereas Edom says, aka the Greeks, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people, not the individual, but the people against whom the Lord has indignation forever. So God, out of the Bible, has indignation or strong animosity towards the children of Esau. The children of Esau are the Amalekites, who are also known as the Macedonians, who are also known as the Greeks. So now with that understanding, why does God dislike the Greeks? Let's find out. Let's go to the book of Joel, chapter 3. Let's go to the book of Joel, chapter 3. And let's find out why God dislikes the children of the Greeks. Let's go to Joel chapter 3, and we're going to read verse 6. It says, "The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border." So according to the Bible, God dislikes the children of the Grecians because the children of Judah and Jerusalem were sold into slavery to the Greeks. Now, we can parallel this now to America. What group of people were sold to the Greeks, aka the Europeans, aka Britain, aka France, aka Spain, aka America? What group of people were sold into captivity to the Grecians, aka the Edomites? Write it in the chat. Write it in the chat. So from there, let's go to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1, and we'll start again. Share the room with at least 10 people, y'all. Tap the screen. Let's get the likes up. We're at 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1, and it says, "And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece." So when the Greeks came into power, was it the dawn of love and peace and safety for all? Or was it something very bad? Watch this. "And made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth." So when Alexander the Greek, aka the Edomite, came into power, they unalived hundreds of people, displaced kingdoms, destabilized nation states, and caused the kings of the earth to be slain. That's what they did. They unalived the kings of the Egyptians who were black. They unalived the kings of the Ethiopians who were black. They unalived the kings of the Cushim who were black. They unalived the kings of the Libyanites or the Libyans who were black. They unalived the kings of the Persians, like King Darius, who was black. And they also unalived and took over the territories of the Israelites, who were black. This is the part of history that many people on the History Channel and National Geographic do not know. They say when the Greeks came into power, it was the dawn of Western civilization, the dawn of art and culture. But in reality, let's find out what the Bible says. Verse 9, it says, "And after his unalive, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years. And evils and evils and evils were multiplied in the earth." So when the Macedonian Greeks, aka the Edomites, came into power, the Bible says evils were multiplied in the earth. Now we have a keen understanding as to why the book known as Maccabees was taken out of the original King James Bible. The original King James Bible had 1st and 2nd Maccabees in it. They had 2nd Esther in it. They had 1st and 2nd Ezra in it. But the Europeans, aka the Protestants, aka the descendants of the Edomites, took Maccabees out of the Bible. Why? Because we would read it in today's time and make parallels to the hidden history that has been kept back from us for centuries. That's why it's very important for us to read, to study, to analyze, and to be open-minded to new information. Many people in the Christian community have not read the book known as 1st and 2nd Maccabees. And in fact, many of their religious pastors have read the text, and because of the things that are written in it, they say, well, that's not canon, it shouldn't be part of the Bible. Why? Because it would prove that there never was a assimilation or a camaraderie amongst the original Hebrews and the Greeks, the Gentiles. You see, they twist and manipulate the New Testament to deceive you to not realize that the people that they were called Jews and Greeks in the New Testament were Israelites that were forced to become Greek citizens, Roman citizens, European citizens, American citizens through the process of Hellenization, which is forced assimilation, forced integration. Does everybody understand that? If you understand that, please place a 1 in the chat. If you're confused, please place a 2 in the chat and we'll read on and give some more clarity. If you understand what we're covering so far, please place a 1 in the chat. If you're confused, please place a 2 in the chat. That way I know for sure who understands and who does not. All right, we got 1. Thank you, T-Bone21, for placing a 1 in the chat. So Edomites were not conquered by Rome, but are Rome. Correct. During the time of Joshua, the son of Nun, the Edomites already invaded the regions known as the lands of Kittim. You can read about that in an extra biblical source known as the book known as Jasher. You can read that in chapter 90, where the Edomites invaded the lands of Kittim and take over, and they became one with the kingdom of Rome. Okay? All right, let's continue. We're at 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 9. Let's start at verse 12. It says, So Alexander reigned 12 years and then unalived, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his unalivement and passing away, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. Now watch this. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So what are we reading directly out of here, Wiz? Shalom to you, James. We're reading here that Antiochus was hostage at Rome, and in the 7th year he ruled over the kingdom of the Greeks, showing you that Antiochus was the Edomites ruling over the kingdom of the Greeks. All right, put a 1 in the chat if you understand. Let's read on. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen, that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So now, why is this very important to read? This is important to read before we get to the New Testament, because notice what they did. They made a covenant with the heathen. Now, what's another word for heathen? The term nations or Gentiles is another word for the term heathen. So let's read it again and let's get more understanding. It says, in those days went there out of Israel, wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen. So now, if anybody is confused, let's go to another text that says the same thing, but instead of using the term heathen, it uses the term Gentiles. Let's go to We're going to go right to another text in the Maccabees. Let's go to 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 48. No, 1 Maccabees chapter 2, verse 48. It says, "So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles, and out of the hand of kings, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph." So notice in the same text of the Maccabees, in one area, it talks about how wicked men went out of Israel and made a covenant with the heathen. And now, under the Maccabean dynasty of Mattathias, they fought against and took back the Bible from the Gentiles. Okay? So now, why does it say in the book of Maccabees that it was a wicked thing to make a covenant with the heathen? The evidence of that is found in Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 3. Let's go to 1 and 2. So Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 2 says this: "And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant, with them, nor show mercy unto them." So now, according to the Bible, can the Israelites make a covenant with the Gentiles, or does God say no? Does God say make no covenant with the Gentiles? Write Y for yes, write N for no. This is very important before we even get to the New Testament, because even in the past, in the Old Testament, our forefather told us through the law to not make any covenant or contract with the Gentiles. All right, we got no's in the building. So now, let's go back to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, and let's read verse 11 again. It says, "In those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow." So now, was this a good thing for us to assimilate, for us to integrate, for us to become Hellenized with the heathen, or was it a bad thing? Write it in the chat. Was it a good thing or was it a bad thing? Write it in the chat. This will help us to kind of deconstruct what we have been taught in modern religion. Jasmine placed on the chat bad. Wiz placed bad. T-Bone 21 placed bad. Okay, good. All right, so let's continue what we're reading. So this is very important because we have some of our brothers, while we do love them, in the Afro-Hebraic communities, many of them have been taught by their leaders and elders to accept and integrate and make covenants with the Gentiles. So now we're going to read what took place during the time period when our ancestors persuaded much of our people to have an affinity with the Gentiles. Let's go to verse 12. 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 12. "So this device, God called it a device, a plot, pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen," meaning after the practices or customs of the Gentiles, right? Watch this. "Whereupon they built a place of exercise, at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen." So now, what do we call today a place of exercise? Do we not call it a gym or gymnasium or stadium? Yes, we do. So now, these places where people go to participate in the sporting events, God called these things what? Customs of the heathen. You see, our ancestors were more into combat sports, meaning we weren't involved in throwing a ball all over the place. We were more involved in swordsmanship. We were involved in archery, spearsmanship. Those were the customs that our ancestors practiced as warriors, like archery. Okay? Nowhere in our Afro-Hebraic community, up until the time that we started to assimilate with the Greeks, that we became involved in Greekish sports, Greekish fashions, right? Such as boxing in the nude, such as the games of discus, such as the Olympic Games. Notice we're still doing those traditions today, such as the stadium arenas in sports. Remember, the stadiums were based on coliseums. Roman coliseums are Roman, Greco-Roman stadiums where black and brown people now assimilate into their sporting events. So we're doing the same thing and repeating history by having affinities to the Gentiles. And when you notice, they no longer have interest, our people in itself, black people, we no longer have interest in our own biblical writings, but we're more interested in what? Sports, right? Sporting events. You're going to notice this coming Thursday that many in the Christian church are going to close their doors right after Thanksgiving, and they're going to watch Thursday and Friday football games. They're going to watch sporting events. They're going to watch uh, uh, basketball and baseball and football. Wait a minute. In ancient times, there was a pagan god known as Baal. Guess what? That same pagan god known as Baal was renamed to Olympus Jupiter, aka Olympus Zeus. So Baal is Zeus, the thunder god. We call them Thor, we call them Odin, we call it Shazam. Nothing new under the sun. We still follow these pagan Greek deities. Now we just call them superheroes. Now we just call them sports idols. Now, what does the Bible say about this? Let's read on. First Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 14. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs, meaning the practices or traditions of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. So now I noticed something very common amongst our people in the Christian community. They have a love and appreciation for the Gentiles, more so than they have for themselves. I also notice it, unfortunately, within our Afro-Hebraic community, that many teach the assimilation of the Gentiles into their congregations. Is this for the benefit of our people, or is it for the detriment? Let's find out. Verse 16. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt. Egypt is in Africa. That he might have the dominion over two realms, meaning what? He wanted to have the rulership over Europe, and he wanted rulership over Africa. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, meaning an army, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy. So now a navy, that means they went on ships and crossed over the Mediterranean Sea to get into Egypt, which is in Africa. This is why many people of the Grecian persuasion, they assume that Greece and Egypt was the same society, when that was not the case. The original Egyptians, just like the original Israelites, were black melanated people. This was before the Greek invasion, before the Roman invasion, before the Arabic invasion. Okay, so let's read on. It says, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt, but Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to deletion. First Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 19. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, that's in Africa, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 140th year, and went up against Israel, shalom to you chosen by Yah, against Israel. Wait a minute. I thought the Greeks and the Romans loved the children of Israel. When you read in the New Testament, Christians improperly quote neither Jew nor Greek, neither bond nor free, and they don't understand what that's talking about. Right here, we're reading out of the Bible that the Greeks did not love the Israelites, but in fact, they went to war with our Afro-Hebraic ancestors. Let's read on. Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt and took the spoils, shalom to you, hope you're doing well, took the spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. So what did they do? They came into our land with a huge army. Listen, whenever someone sends a military force, are they coming to hug and kiss you, or are they coming to unalive you? Place it in the chat. When the Greeks under Antiochus, when they came into the land of our ancestors, were they coming for peace and love and quote unquote spreading republicanism and democracy, or was they coming for war? They were coming for war. Let's read on. Verse 20. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof. So let me parallel that to today. This was a similarity to, let's say, Dylan Roof, a descendant of a European American, gathering troops to enter into a church and to unalive black people that were in the church, and stealing the gold and silver out of the church. This is the parallel. This is the exact parallel that I can give it. This is similar to during the 1960s, when black churches had European Americans invade into it and place devices to go boom, boom in those churches and unalive innocent men, women, and children during acts of worship. So if they entered proudly into our sanctuaries to unalive our people, do you think it's a good idea in modern times to say, you know what, under the banner of a Messiah, under the banner of love your neighbor as ourselves, let's invite them back into our congregations and let them worship under us. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Does that make sense to you? Yes or no? You see, a lot of times when we talk about religion and spirituality, we seem to forget history. All I'm doing is reading the Bible and giving you parallels. I'm not telling you how to think. I'm not giving you a decision on what to do. I'm just simply asking yes or no questions. If the Greeks came proudly into your house, unalived the women and children, and destroyed your house, would you centuries later tell your descendants, hey, invite the Gentiles back into your house because you believe in God? Yes or no? Does that seem reasonable? I'm not going to tell you what to think. We're just asking yes or no questions. Let's read on. It says, verse 21, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of showbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and the veil and the crowns and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. Wait a minute. So we're reading here out of the Bible that they took out of the Bible. Remember, this is in the book known as the Apocrypha. These are hidden writings of the Bible that the children of Europeans claim that it's not part of the Bible. They say, don't read that. It's not part of the Bible. We don't need you to understand what it says. Why is that? Why is it that pastors go to seminary schools, they read these documents in their schools, and then when they go to church, they teach people not to read it? In fact, many of them write term papers. They write term papers about the books of Maccabees. They call themselves Christian apologetics. That while they go to school in their seminary schools to obtain their doctorates of theology, Zeusology, they then turn on TikTok and YouTube and teach people not to read the book known as Maccabees, but they've read it for themselves. This is a perfect parallel. Let's say you're trying to learn how to ride a bike. The Bible is a bike. Someone says to you, oh, you don't need to practice for yourself. Let me tell you not to ride the bike for yourselves, but I'm going to tell you the instructions of the bike. That's exactly what it is when it comes to this Bible. They tell black and brown people, you don't need to read the Bible for yourself. Let a pastor explain it to you. Let a theologian explain it to you. And whenever we, as Afro-Hebraic communities, say you need to read the Apocrypha, they say to us, no, it's not canon. Why? Because this will lift up the proverbial skirt and expose their disease. It will expose their herpes, for lack of a better term, right? Showing you that they purposefully want to deceive us from what is in these writings. Let's continue. It says, 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 24, it says, and when he had taken away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. Wow. Therefore, there was great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, and the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every groom took up a lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. Wow. So imagine the primary place where you go to worship with your ancestors, where children were born, where various barbecues and cookouts were made, and the very church that you went to fellowship with brothers and sisters, where you had Passover, where you had Feast of Tabernacles, where you would come and honor your Creator. Now people weren't even getting married in the sanctuary anymore. Now the priests were so sad that they couldn't do their service anymore. And at the same time, they were trying to convince our people, no, go to the sports arena. Go watch Tyson fight against a Grecian. Go watch the Chicago Bulls versus the New York Knicks. These are the parallels of what's going on during Greek assimilation. Let's read on. Verse 28. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute, meaning taxation, unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, meaning an army, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. So now, this shows you how black people forget things very easily. Very easily. So Antiochus sent an army to invade our people. He went into our church, destroyed our temples, unalived our people. 2 years later, we had amnesia. 2 years later, he came in and sent a tax collector to say, you know what? Let me speak nice to these black people. Let me say to them, we love you. The king appreciates you. Go to the polls and vote. Go to the polls and pick your new oppressor. We appreciate you. Just like several years ago, you had a political candidate who told you to your face that he did not like you. And now, several years later, you completely forgot, and now you decided, we feel comfortable with you being a president again. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. We have spiritual amnesia. Literally, we're reading out of the Bible, and we can parallel it to today. Let's continue. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 31. And when he had taken spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and the children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. What can we parallel this to today? Do you remember during the 1950s and the 1960s when they burned our churches down? Do you remember during Black Wall Street when they burned our churches, our businesses? Do you remember in Florida when they did the same thing? Do you remember in Chicago in 1920 when they did the same thing? Do you remember all the various prominent places that we established all throughout the Americas, including the Caribbean islands, including South America, when they burned it all down. And what did they do? They placed our women and children in captivity and stole our natural resources. They did it to the Yamasee, a group of black Indians. They did it to the Seminoles, the group of black Indians. They did it to the Gullah Geechee. They did it to the Picot Indians. They did it to the people of the continent of Africa. They did it to the people that were scattered in the Caribbean islands that they call, so-called, West Indian. Why are they calling black people West Indian? And then we forget, we say native indigenous populations are just brown people. While you have people right in the Caribbean islands called West Indian. And then another misnomer, they say they did it also to the people that they call the misnomer African, who are also a part of the Afro-Hebraic communities. All we're doing is reading the text and giving you parallels. What are we reading? The Bible. The Bible. Let's parallel what we're reading out of the Bible with Black history so you know that the Bible is a true book. Were there vast amounts of kingdoms established in the west coast of Africa, on the east coast of Africa, in South Central Africa, in Southeastern Africa, that the nations of the Greeks and the Romans, who renamed themselves Portuguese, Spain, France, British, did they come into Africa, burn down our cities, burn down our temples, burn down our political castles, and then take the women and children captive, and steal and possess our cattle? Write Y for yes, write N for no. Did Great Britain, did America, did France do the same thing to native indigenous populations in the Americas? Write Y for yes, write N for no. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just asking questions and you answer for yourself, yes or no. Let's continue. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 32. But the women and the children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. Verse 33. Then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with a mighty tower, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. Wait a minute. So when the Greeks came into power, they took our women and children captives. They possessed the cattle. They stole our natural resources. Then they rebuilt the city of David, created a strong barrier, a wall, to keep us out, and made a tower full of archers so that way they could spy on anyone trying to come back into the city. And they put in our land a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. This parallels today. You have Gentiles that live in the Holy Land that do not appreciate that land, and they're blowing it up to hell and back. There is a swift judgment. All of these nations will fall under the valley of Jehoshaphat, mentioned in the book of Joel. It's happening before your eyes. But let's read on. Verse 35. They stored it also with armor and victuals, meaning food and material protection. And when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare, meaning a trap. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary and an evil adversary to Israel. So now, when you research the Hebrew term for adversary, the Hebrew term adversary is shaitan, or what we call modern day Satan. So the Greeks were established as shaitan, or Lucifer, against the children of God. Let's read on. It says, for it was a place to lie in wait, meaning a trap, meaning just like the police on the corners of every black and brown community lie in wait to trap black and brown people, the Greeks were doing the same exact thing. Watch this. Verse 37. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary. Remember, the term sanctuary means church or temple, and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her. And her own children left her. This is showing you the parallels of today. The real people of God are not in the Holy Land, but the real people of God fled out of Jerusalem. Let me prove it to you now in the New Testament. Let's go to the New Testament. Shalom to you. Hope you're doing well. Let's go to Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Luke chapter 21, verse 24. And it reads, and they, shalom to you, Raphael, shall fall by the edge of the sword, meaning the children of Israel will fall by the Romans, aka Europeans, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Meaning what? Right now, the real people of God, the black people, the Hispanic people, are not in their holy land. The African people are not in their holy land. They were exiled as slaves in all nations. Now, what I like to always do when I read a text is simply ask questions to get a better understanding, to put our critical thinking hats on. For example, when we read this text, you have to ask the question, Yiddish people that converted to a religion called Judaism, did they go into slavery in all nations? Yes or no? I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not telling you how to think. We're only asking yes or no questions. Did Germanic people that converted to a religion called Judaism, who call themselves Ashkenaz, did they go into captivity or slavery in all nations? Yes or no? Chinese people, did they go into slavery in all nations? Yes or no? Arabs that converted to a religion called Islam, did they go into slavery? Yes or no? In all nations. Now, we're not talking about little wars where people fight against each other and hold themselves captive. We're not talking about prisoners of war. We're discussing a global system where millions of people are held as captives in all nations, just like the Bible says. So now, did this happen to so-called Africans? Yes or no? Did this happen to native, indigenous, or aboriginal people? Yes or no? Did black people go into slavery in all nations? Yes or no? Did aboriginals in Australia get taken as slaves? Yes or no? Did populations in the Caribbean islands, in Mexico, in South America, the United States, Canada, the UK, China, Russia, and other places, did they go into captivity in all nations? Yes or no? Was there a global slave trade? Yes or no? There were black people that were enslaved in China. Look up the Tang Dynasty. Look up the Song Dynasty. Many people don't know that your ancestors built the Great Wall of China as Kunlun and Zhang slaves. Many people don't know the history of the Trans-Pacific slave trade. Correct. Keyword, in all nations. So now, let's parallel this to 1 Maccabees chapter 1. Let's read verse 32. But the women and children they took captive, and possessed the cattle. This matches Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Luke 21:24 was the future. So this happened during the time of the Greeks. Luke 21:24 was after 70 AD. Let's go down. 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 39. It says, no, verse 37, thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Whereupon whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. This parallels Luke 21:24, that says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So what is that telling you? That's telling you the people that are in Jerusalem right now, they are Gentiles. They are Gentiles. They are Gentiles. Let's read on. Now, what we're going to read now is the formation of the New World Order. Shalom to you, no problem. As well as modern Christianity. We're going to show you how when the Greeks came into power, the customs and practices that they participated in led to the formation of what we call today Christianity. Listen close. This is 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, one people, one people. This parallels European nations that they say out of many, we're going to create one people. This is assimilation. This is the New World Order. This is taking all nations and having them under the banner of the Greeks, the banner of the Romans, the banner of European citizens, the banner of American citizens, the banner of Australian citizens, the banner of South Afrikaner citizens. Okay, watch this, verse 42. And everyone should leave his laws, meaning they leave their ways of life, their customs. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. So how do we parallel that to today? Do you notice that no matter where you go, most nations assimilate themselves to the customs of Western civilization? Write 1 for yes, write 2 for no. Under your observations, since you've been living on the earth, whether 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, do you notice a common trait where people travel to Western countries and become more assimilated to the Western way of life? Most people, majority of people, practice Greco-Roman and European customs, and they forget their own traditions. Think about it. In America, do you celebrate Indian customs, customs from Africa, customs from the Caribbean islands, customs from Persia, or do you celebrate Greco-Roman traditions? Do you celebrate American traditions, aka holidays? Watch this. Verse 43. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion. So don't let them deceive you to think that politics and religion don't go hand in hand. In fact, the way of life of the Greeks and the Romans, their religion was permeated in their celebrations. Their religion was permeated in their celebrations, their customs, their traditions, their holidays. Okay? From there, let's continue. It says, yea, many also. From there, let's continue. It says, yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion. Consented to his religion. And sacrifice unto idols, and profane the Sabbath. And sacrifice unto idols and profane the Sabbath. So how does this parallel to Christianity? We have various traditions today where people unwittingly set up barbecues, cookouts, sacrifices to Christian ideologies, Christian, Roman, pagan traditions. Let's read on. It says, for the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings, and sacrifice, and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. So what did the Greeks do when they came into power in Northeast Africa? They stole, unalived, placed captive our people as slaves, then set up their own religion to supersede our religion. They said you can no longer celebrate the Sabbath. Let's replace it with Sol Invictus. Let's replace it with Dionysus. Let's replace it with Hercules. Let's replace it with Bacchus. Let's replace it with Christmas. Let's replace it with Easter. Let's replace it with Valentine's Day. Let's replace it with many other traditions. Like there's one coming up recently called Thanksgiving. Now watch this. What do people participate in with Greek and Roman traditions? Let's find out. And set up altars. Wait a minute. Altars are found in churches. And groves. Wait a minute. Groves are a group of trees. What traditions do we follow where people bring a trees? What traditions do we follow where people bring a tree to their house on December 25th? I wonder. And chapels of idols. Chapels of idols. Wait a minute. Chapels are churches. And in those churches, they have statues, they have pictures, they have projector screens with religious icons. The statue in the Vatican that you think is St. Peter is really a statue of Zeus. The statue in the Vatican that you think is Jesus is really a statue of Sol Invictus. The statue that you think is Mother Mary is really a statue of Diana, Queen of Heaven, Ishtar, Eostre, Easter. So the very thing that we're reading in the Bible, we can parallel that to today. Meaning, the Greeks forced the black Jews to stop celebrating their own traditions, their own customs like Passover, Feast of Dedication, Feast of Tabernacles, and now they say, celebrate Saturnalia. We call it Christmas. Celebrate Lupercalia. We call it Valentine's Day. Celebrate the fall and winter solstice. We call it Thanksgiving Day. Watch this. It says, and pollute the holy sanctuary and the holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh, swine's flesh, swine's flesh, and unclean beasts. Wait a minute. This is Christianity, y'all. This is not what our ancestors celebrated. This is the religion of the Greeks. Christians celebrate the Christmas ham. Christians on Thanksgiving Day cook ham hocks, rump roast, pork belly, pig feet, chitterlings, and various other, what does the Bible say? Swine's flesh and unclean beasts. So what we're seeing here is that when the Greeks came into power, they replaced black people's religion with Greek religion, Greek and Roman traditions. And we still do it today in Western civilization. If you understand the content that's being covered today on the Forefront Radio, please show your appreciation by tapping the screen, get the likes up, share the room with at least 10 people. Also, if you would, a donation would be sufficient in helping us to support this ministry. Our Cash App is APHIELLEVI. Your support goes a long way in assisting us in keeping the lights on so we can spread the truth throughout our diaspora. Let's continue. We're at 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 48. So put a 1 in the chat if you understand that Greek and Roman religion includes both church and state coming together to replace the religion of the Bible with the religion of the Greeks and Romans. Put a 2 in the chat if you're confused. Once again, place a 1 in the chat if we understand that the Greek and Roman religion replaced the religion of our ancient ancestors. Place a 2 in the chat if you need more understanding. We want to make sure everyone is on the same page. All right, for those of you that are just joining on, welcome to the Forefront Radio, a diaspora channel. We go into biblical-based texts and we make parallels between what we're reading in the text and modern history. So thank you for joining. If you're not a part of the team, feel free to join up. Follow this account on all streaming platforms. We're available on iHeartRadio. We're available on Spotify. We're available on Pandora. We're available on YouTube. Just type the Forefront Radio and you'll be able to have access to all our content for free. Okay, for free. We provide all our content for free, but we do need your support. Please do support independent media. Donations go a long way in spreading the truth. All right, we're at 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 48. It says, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. Now, the term profanation literally means secularized, to make secular, to make worldly, to make ungodly. So what modern religion has done is they replace the teachings of the Bible with pseudo-spiritual, feel-good messages of prosperity, wealth, riches, blessings, emotional gratification without moral change. I'm going to say that again for the kids in the back. Modern religion has replaced the moral authority of the Bible with feel-good messages, motivational speeches, pastors and preachers giving us motivational thoughts leading towards prosperity, leading towards riches and wealth, leading towards blessings, but there is no significant moral change. They go into the church a thief, they come out of the church a thief. They come into the church cheating on their spouse. They come out of the church doing the same exact thing. There is no moral accountability anymore. And here's the proof as we read on. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 49. To the end that they might forget the law, that they might forget the law, that they might... So modern religion from the Greeks and Romans, the end goal was that we would forget the Bible, that we would forget the holy writings, that we would forget what the scriptures say. Ask a Christian today, do you know the 10 Commandments by heart? They'll start to say, no, I don't know it by heart. No. When you ask them, where can I find the laws of the dietary laws in the Bible? They'll say, dietary laws? What dietary laws? When you ask the Christian today, where can I find the holy days or holidays of the Bible? They'll say, wait a minute, I thought Christmas was a holiday. Why? But I can't find it. Where I can't find Christmas in the Bible. You see, the end result of Greco-Roman religion, let's read it again, 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 49, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. Meaning what? When the Greeks came into power, they replaced God's holidays with man's holidays. For example, God says that the Sabbath day is the Shabbat, which is the seventh day of the week, which is Saturday. Greeks and Romans changed through the Roman Catholic Church, through the European Church, through the Anglican Church, through the Presbyterian Church, through the Lutheran Church, through the Baptist Church. They changed it to Sunday. To the end, let's read it again, verse 49, to the end that they might forget the law, meaning forget the Bible, and change all the ordinances, meaning what? We no longer celebrate Passover, we celebrate the festival of Ashtoreth, aka Ishtar, aka Easter. We no longer remember the Feast of Dedication. We celebrate the winter solstice, aka Saturnalia, the fall festivals, aka Thanksgiving. Let's read it again. To the end that they might forget the law, meaning forget the Bible. This is what modern integration with the Greeks and the Romans, aka Roman Catholic, aka Roman Anglican, aka Roman Lutheran, aka Roman Baptist, aka Roman Presbyterian, aka Roman Seventh-day Adventist, aka all of these churches were founded by the descendants of Greeks and Romans, all of them. Well, not all, majority. I would say 99.999%. You would have to go to East Africa and visit places like Ethiopia only to get an understanding of the practices of Africans that believe in Christ. But unfortunately, many of our people in the continent of Africa have also received misconceptions and deceptions about the Bible due to centuries of Islamic, Greek, and Roman influence. Now let's read on. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 50. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said that he should be unalived. Wow. Now we see why they said not to include this in the Bible. Now we see why. Let's continue. In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers to the commandment of the king to set up overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. I know another country, I'm not going to name their name, that established overseers over the indigenous populations of America, overseers over black people in America, overseers over so-called Indians in America. But I'm not going to name their names. Let's read on. And then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, meaning forsook the Bible. And so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. The term succor means help, anywhere they could run for help. Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 140th year, they set up a abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that when the Greeks and Romans came into power throughout Africa, they replaced our religion. Throughout America, They replaced our religion. Throughout all Europe, they replaced our religion and set up their own churches, their own religious institutions, and their own statues and icons and iconography depicting Greek and Roman people as deities. For example, Zeus, that's the statue of Peter in the Catholic Church. Diana of Ephesus, that's the statue of Mother Mary in the Catholic Church. So when you go to Catholic churches throughout Africa, they assume that Jesus is European with no Bible verse. They assume that God is European with no Bible verse. They assume that the angels are little Cupid babies with no Bible verse. All Greek and Roman. Ask them the question, can you show me in the Bible that Jesus is European? That the angels are European? Because guess what? In those same churches of men, they depict demons, goblins, and devils as having Afroid texture hair, as having dark skin, as having green skin, brown skin, blue skin. That's what they do in their churches. Let's read it again. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 54. Now the 15th day of the month, Caslu, in the 140th and 5th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law, when they rent in pieces the Bible, which they found, they burnt them with fire, with fire. So now what are the parallels that we can go to look at today that matches up with what we're reading here? I recall earlier this year, 2024, around the month of April, March, June, July, somewhere around there, current president Vladimir Putin placed records and archaeological findings depicting the original people of the Bible as black melanated people. Put a 1 in the chat if you're familiar with that current events news story. Put a 2 in the chat if you are unfamiliar with that. If you heard that Russia placed various images of black images of Jesus, Mother Mary, heard that Russia placed various images of black images of Jesus, Mother Mary, heard that Russia placed various images of black images of Jesus, Mother Mary, heard that Russia placed various images of black images of Jesus, Mother Mary, started to burn Bibles. Many people of the European persuasion started to burn Bibles. Persuasion started to burn Bibles. Y'all do me persuasion started to burn Bibles. Persuasion started to burn Bibles. Y'all do me a favor, tap the screen, get the likes up, share the room with at least 10 people, y'all. I apologize. The internet connection was going in and out. Let me repeat what I stated. Right when the former president of Russia was giving out information pertaining to black Hebraic communities, in America, you found people burning Bibles. People in Canada burning Bibles. This parallels what we're reading here in the text. Let's read it again. 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 56. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law, meaning they were tearing up the Bible, which they found, they burnt them with fire. And whosoever was found with any of the books of the Testament, meaning the Hebrew Testament, the Hebrew Bible, or if any consented to the law, meaning they wanted to follow what the Bible says, the king's commandment was that they should be put to deletion. Now, what is this parallel? This parallels the Inquisition of the Americas. When black people could not read or write, they would unalive you, emulate you, dismember you if you were caught reading the Bible. The same thing happened during the Inquisition in Spain, Portugal, France, Great Britain. Any place where black and brown people were found reading the Bible, they would accuse you of being a Judaizer. They would say, you're trying to follow the Bible, and then they would persecute you. Everything we're reading out of this text, you can find parallels in black history, Hispanic history, African history, Native Indigenous history. Let's read on. 1 Maccabees Chapter 1, verse 56. And when they had rent in pieces the book of the law, which they had found, they burnt with fire, and wheresoever was found with any of the book of the Testament, or with any that consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they were put to deletion. Thus they did by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day, the 25th day, this is where you get the Christmas from, the 25th day of the month did they sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. Meaning what? They took the statues of Zeus and placed it on the temples of Yahweh Elohim. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to deletion certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged, what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say? The infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved, and confirmed to themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Meaning they didn't want to eat the shrimp, crab, pork, lobster that the Gentiles brought. Wherefore they chose rather to be deleted or pass away, that they might not be defiled with the meats, meaning the food, and that they might not profane or make themselves secular or ungodly the holy covenant. So then they passed away. And there was very great wrath or trouble, destruction upon the children of Israel. Thank you for listening to the Forefront Radio. This is the book of 1 Maccabees Chapter 1. I pray this information was insightful for you. This shows you that we should not assimilate with the Gentiles. We should separate ourselves from the Gentiles. If you learned today the importance of this, please place a 1 in the chat. If you're confused, please place a 2 in the chat. The Forefront Radio can be found on all your streaming platforms of podcasts. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Audible, Amazon Music, and many other platforms. If you want to find a replay of this episode, feel free to join us on the Forefront Radio 2.0 on YouTube. Once again, we do require that you send any alms, any donations, any contributions to us via Cash App or PayPal. The Cash App is APHIELLEVI. Your efforts go a long way to assisting us to keeping the lights on, purchasing internet data. You know we are in the continent of Africa, and the resources are limited in Africa compared to Western nations. So your assistance will go a long way to support independent media. Keep in mind, T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, these pastors, these ministers have their congregants send well over $500, $200 at any given time, and they're receiving lies. But here it is. We provide independent media for free, but at times we don't have support. So it's important for you, if you appreciate this content, to support this ministry. so we can reach more people all throughout the continent of Americas, all over the continents of Africa, Europe, and many places throughout the world. We have a great job to do, and you can do your part by joining this community, following the Forefront Radio, and sharing the information that we teach to awaken our people that are lost. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your listenership. We appreciate you all. And with that, we say shalom.